It's a lifestyle business. I basically sort of was found you out of a game of hide and seek with my with my oldest,
Right.
and sort
Okay.
of he found you. He kept saying, so I was like, okay, that's a good company name. I'll use that. And it's I basically juggle full time, hang out with them and doing care, and then
Yeah.
doing searches and things for clients. So it works out quite well.
Awesome.
But yeah, thanks so much for jumping on this. I really appreciate it. It's your career path has been amazing. I mean, you started out as an accounts apprentice, it looks like, at 17,
That's right.
straight
Yeah.
from A levels, where most people your age would have been filling out UCAS forms.
Yeah.
What made you go the other way, and how much of that was sort of your own decision versus someone pointing you in the right direction?
To be honest, I think most of it was my own decision. I've always been quite a I don't know. I've always quite enjoyed working. My granddad had a small little taxi company, taxi business, when I was a kid, and I remember sort of at the age of 11 or 12 working on Saturdays. When I say working, I was sort of cleaning the taxis for him and getting a little bit of pocket money,
Mm.
and that kind of made me realize you really need to work for what you want, right? So I remember my first big purchase was a BMX. I think it was like
Nice.
£150, but it took me about 15 weeks to save up for it. And shortly after that, I think I always floated around sort of after work and on the weekends, sort of working away in local shops and whatnot. And then when I got to, yeah, I guess the age of 17, when I was finishing up my A levels, everyone else, or all my peers and friends at school, were moving on to university. And I don't think I was in a position myself to go to university in terms of just living away from home, but also exams and studying wasn't really for me. I learned a lot more on the job. So at that moment in time, I thought, no, I definitely want to work, but I also appreciated that I couldn't just jump straight into work. I needed to carry on some studies, in one way, shape, or another. And then I think I just came across apprenticeships. And at the time, it was very, very focused towards sort of trade apprenticeships. So plumbing, engineering, brickwork, and X, Y, and Z. And at the time, I'm not sure if this is still a thing, but I remember there was a government apprenticeship portal where on the sort of government website, you could just view a list of apprentices in the area or in a region. And I just stumbled across three or four like office-based apprentices and thought, oh, I'll apply for all four. And I was always quite good at maths, and fortunately, I guess I landed one in accounting.
Mm.
For a funny at the time, actually, I was actually applying for a role. It was a company called Bidwells, which is a surveying company, and they have various different divisions. And at the time, they had a small little estate agency shop in my local town. And I thought I was actually applying for an apprenticeship to work as an estate agent. I thought, oh, that'd be fun, go and work, go and
So
view
no one ever.
view some houses and see what's out there on the market and whatnot. And yeah, during the interview, I realised that that's not quite the job I'd applied for. Not that I didn't want that job, or I did want that job. I just kind of wanted to take a job.
Mm.
And it turned out that the role was for an accounts apprentice in their rural division. So I fell into agriculture, which was um, very new to me.
Mm.
It was an apprenticeship program under AAT, so I did that for 3 years, levels 2, 3, and 4. And shortly after that, I finished my apprenticeship program and moved up to, I guess, accounts assistant or whatever the next step after the apprenticeship was.
Mm.
So that was great and gave me kind of a basic understanding to double entry bookkeeping, management accounting, VAT, and XYZ. And at that time, I was probably early 20s. So I was probably 20, just turning 21, I think. And most of my friends had kind of finished their undergraduate degree, not sure what they were going to do next. And obviously, by then, all my friends had no experience but had some qualification. And I had the qualification as well as 3 years of experience, which went quite a long way. And then I discovered that there was more apprenticeships to be taken, and you can do ACCA or CIMA or ACA under an apprenticeship program as well. So at that time, I very fortunately landed a job in UHY Hacker Young, which is a top 20 or was a top 20 accountancy firm at the time. And then I started my ACCA journey, which was kind of a step up from AAT, a little bit more compliance heavy, so statutory accounts and corporation tax returns and whatnot, which was great. And for me, built a lot of underlying sort of knowledge, and I gained a lot of skills from doing that role. And a lot of it, for me, I guess long term, the vision is to kind of run my own business, I think. But to have all of that sort of understanding of what happens in the back end and from a compliance point of view is really important. But I also wasn't really enjoying it too much. It was a bit too numbers office heavy for me. Nevertheless, it was great. So I did that for, I think, 2 years, and I was towards the end of my ACCA exams. I think I had done 10 out of 12. But bear in mind also the beauty of having an AAT apprenticeship as well is when you move on to ACCA, you get a few exemptions. So I didn't have to sit the first 3 exams, which was kind of a bonus as well.
Nice.
At that time, again, COVID hit. So I'd had probably 6 years experience working in accounting. And because of COVID, I kind of took a bit of a step back and thought, well, what do I want to do? And back to my point of kind of running my own business or being a little bit more of a business partner and sitting on the board of a SME is kind of what I thought that I wanted at that moment in time. So yeah, I took a step back and looked for roles in industry. The beauty of being an accountant, I guess you can just slip into any industry. I guess the numbers are all the same, right? It's just how you use them. So I discovered craft beer and thought, yep, I'm quite a fan of beer. And yeah, then again, got quite lucky. I moved to London and got a job in East London working in-house for a small independent craft brewery over in Hackney. And that was great. And I had a really supportive manager. And at the time, as I say, I had 2 exams left with ACCA. So then I did a bit of a home study and just kind of went to a college on my weekends in London Bridge and sat those last 2 exams, which was hard work, but we got it done. And then from off the back of Crate, which is the previous brewery I used to work at, I was approached by the recruiters at Brixton, and then yeah, the rest is history, I guess. I'm still here at Brixton 3.5, 4 years later. And I think, yeah, quite a young age, having now 10 years of experience has allowed me to, or it's allowed a lot of founders and managers to put a lot of trust in me, I think. And I've also got quite a lot of experience from various different angles from finance, being in practice and in-house as well. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a overview summary of.
It's a great journey, honestly. Like, it's sort of I think like I say, that when I made my post about sort of experience over qualifications, I put out a survey around to CFOs and hiring managers what they prefer: a degree educated 3 years candidate versus 3 years of experience, like an AAT profile. I think something like 86% chose the AAT profile, and things. It's just interesting how things have changed, and the perception of what good looks like has changed, thankfully, as well. But when you did your AAT into the ACCA, it's obviously now it's a well-trodden path, but at the time I think it was probably less common when you started. Did you ever feel like you were, I don't know, proving something to people who thought the degree route was the only legitimate way in?
Yes, to be fair. Come from quite a very working class background, and not many of my family have had office jobs, I guess. And I do remember a comment that my sixth form tutor said to me when I kind of refused to fill out the UCAS application. And it was quite a horrible comment, but he said something along the lines, I had quite impressive maths A-level results and whatnot. And he sort of said, oh, you must be really proud, Shaun. You must be the first Fenwick that's going to university or something. I thought, that's not actually a nice comment. That's quite a dig. And at that time, I kind of remember going, actually, you know what? I'm not going to go to university. I didn't want to go to universities, and I'm going to prove you wrong. So there we are. You can do these sorts of careers without going to university, 100%.
Brilliant. I mean, that was what leads on to my next question. It was, if a school leaver sort of came up to you tomorrow and said they were just unsure whether to go to uni or do apprenticeships, what would you actually tell them? Not the sort of diplomatic answer, but the honest one.
I mean, obviously, I've only got my side of the argument. I think there's a lot of pros for going to university, just from a sort of personal development point of view and learning how to live on your own, making new connections and having friends, making new friends and whatnot. And I think I can't really comment on that side of things. Um, I would say if your desired sort of career path justifies having a degree, then
Mhm.
if you want to be a doctor or something like that, then absolutely go to university. You need that
Mm.
degree. If you're unsure and you just want to go to university, really weigh up, is it for sort of your personal reasons in terms of, you just want to go out and have fun and make new friends and build a network, or
Mm.
is it you want to go and get the degree?
Yeah.
I think if it's not so much because it's what you need for your career, then really, really think about it and really look into like how much is university actually costing you.
Mm.
I think a lot of those who are on the sort of plan two student loan repayments at the moment, there's a lot in the headlines at the moment, but it's an expensive loan. At the
Mm.
time, you're sort of told, look, it's almost free. You're never going to pay
Yeah.
it back. No, you are. You're going to be paying. I look at it as an additional 9% tax
Hmm.
on um, everything you earn for the next 30 years.
Mm.
And, you know, is the degree you're going to do going to give you that 9% pay increase above everyone else who's not done that degree? I think
It's
in
a
a lot
great
of
way of
cases,
thinking
no.
about it. I don't think students or 18-year-olds have that mindset at the time, though, and no one. So it does feel like you're sort of being sold a dummy almost because the lack of financial literacy education within schools now doesn't really gear you up to make this decision
No,
justly. You sort of feel like you're shackled by this huge debt without realizing what the impact is.
I think that will change. I mean, there's a lot of, I guess when I was at school making that decision as well, a lot of your, I guess, role models in life, your parents or aunties or uncles or whoever's gone to university, at the time they probably didn't notice the student loan repayments.
Yeah.
Student loans at that time were, I think, £1,000 a year. Yeah, of course you're going to repay that in the next 5, 10 years, hopefully. But now that those student loans are £9,000 a year, maybe more, I'm not sure, plus your living loans and everything else, I think most students leave university now with 50, £60,000 worth of debt on average. And
It's a wedge.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're not going to be earning enough in year one to be starting to repay those loans. So,
Mm.
you're accruing interest. So before you start earning what you need to be earning, your loan balance is going to be 60, 70 grand easily.
Yeah.
And yeah.
What do you wish someone had told you at 18 that you had to figure out on your own?
Um, I think if someone had told me that there are apprenticeship opportunities out there in, you know, 10, 20, 30 different industries, then I would have been quite amazed. At the time, I really didn't know. I genuinely thought, I found this one job advert for an office-based apprenticeship, and I thought, wow, that is unheard of. I think if someone had told me that you can do an apprenticeship in almost any field out there, I would have taken a
Mm.
little bit more time to do a bit more research. Not that
Yeah.
I have any regrets, but I did just get quite lucky. But I think if I hadn't have been so lucky, I would have almost
Mm.
just parked it and gone down the university route just because that was the default. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
was lucky. I was lucky that I kind of found that job advert, and it
Mm.
didn't take me too many interviews to get an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. That's not everyone's luck. So
Mm.
yeah.
It makes sense. Now, you've built some serious technical credibility without the degree that most finance roles still ask for on paper. How do you think the profession needs to change, and do you think it actually will?
Um, I think the profession definitely will change. I think especially with like AI and things like that, I do worry a little bit that juniors in accounting will not understand the sort of the underlying detail of what makes up a set of accounts, for example, because the software and the systems in place do all of the sort of back end heavy manual work for you now,
Mm.
and that's that worries me a little bit, because if something goes wrong, there's going to be leaders who don't quite understand how to fix those issues. But I think the way the industry is changing is, rather than sort of sitting in a dark room in the corner of the office, grinding numbers, I think where we become quite valuable now and in the future is using what the systems and software produces us to kind of business partner.
Mm.
And I think business partnering is really important. And we as a finance team are able to partner with various different departments in the business. I think the reason I say that is because traditional accounting can seem quite boring, I think, or lonely, but the way it's moving is actually you're quite heavily involved in the entire business. And I think you really need to spend time getting involved with the business. I think it's really difficult to just be so focused on finance and numbers.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's really answered your
No,
question.
it really does. Thanks for the insight. You've been involved, I'm assuming, in hiring at Brixton across finance and maybe
Yeah.
some other functions. But when you're sitting across from a candidate, what are you actually looking for in the first 5 minutes?
Personality, and culture fit. I know it sounds a little bit, cliche, but I think and I think my boss is probably on the same page, or maybe I picked this up from my boss, but um, most people can learn a job if you've got the enthusiasm and the willingness to learn and get stuck in. You
Hmm.
can teach anyone to do the job, but you really need a character who is wanting that opportunity and is going to fit in with everyone else you're working with. I think if it's the opposite and you hire someone who is just sound, knows everything, but just brings no value, work can become quite dull and boring if you hire that person. That's what I personally think. I
Yeah,
think, yeah,
that
hire
makes sense.
someone well, I also work in the drinks industry, right? But hire someone that you'd like to go to the pub with for a drink, and I
That's a
think
great
everything will
question.
work out.
That's a lot of hiring managers I work with say, just
Yeah,
like, Tom, could you just imagine me having a beer with them and you then go from there.
yeah.
What's the one thing a candidate can do in an interview that immediately impresses you, and what's the one thing that immediately puts you off?
I think certainly asking questions about the job. Interviews have to be a two-way interview. I think I've been in a few interviews where it has been very one-sided, and actually, I think there's a lot on the hiring manager to make
Mm.
sure that the candidate applying for the job genuinely wants the job and is also going to be looked after, and we want them as a candidate as well. Um, I think often if you're going into a job like, oh, give me this job, that's not a good look. That kind of puts me off. It's like, no, why do you want the job, and
Yeah.
what are you going to bring to the company? And oh, sorry, and what's attracted you to apply for that job? Like, why do you want to work for Brixton Brewery? Like, tell me more about that.
Mm.
I know you. I'm sure you're a great candidate. You've got this far. You've got an interview. We've read your CV. We've read your LinkedIn. But I think just, yeah, trying to just be enthusiastic about the company you're applying for, and yeah, and I think also depending on the role, show some be just be transparent of where you are in your career, and like don't shy away if there's something on the job description that you're not really too sure on how to do, or you've had no experience in that area. Just be honest and be like, look, I can't do this, or I've not done this, but I'm really wanting to learn and develop my own skills, and I think this role is going to give me that opportunity to do that. I think is a good trait to have,
Mm.
and it's worked in my favour before. I think sort of the commercial side of finance, I didn't have much experience on in the past, but I've certainly got that experience now, and that's
Mm.
purely from an interview, just being like, look, this job is heavily geared towards commercial finance. I've got no experience in that. I have all of the technical um, skills and knowledge that I need, but commercials is something I want to learn and
Yeah.
get involved in, and that's worked in my favour in the past.
Nice. And then when it comes to sort of this really helps candidates because creating CVs is a nightmare for
Yeah.
so many. What does a strong CV look like to you? And does a degree still carry weight when you're reviewing applicants, if given your own sort of routine?
I think it does carry weight. I mean, there's a lot. It's hard work getting a degree for sure,
Mm.
and I think the biggest thing there is just commitment. And if you've been committed enough to finish your degree, then hopefully, you're committed to the job. I can imagine it being quite easy to give up and finish your degree early or whatnot. So I think that, yeah, think there's still value there. I think linking somehow what you've learned in your degree to what the job is going to entail would help massively. Like, I don't know, I learned this in my degree, and this is how I can help your finance function,
Mm.
X, Y, and Z. Uh, for a junior role, yeah, I think that would be helpful. I think having like applying for a finance role at a junior level, but having a degree in history, for example, it's kind of like what I don't really get the point.
Mm.
There's nothing to shout about. Put it on your CV at the bottom. But I would like to see what have you done, or what's pulling you towards a role in finance. Have you done any extracurriculum studies outside of your degree? Have you done some courses on LinkedIn? Have you actually looked into what the job entails?
Mm.
Yeah,
That's really insightful. This is the last question, and thanks for this.
no problem at all.
Now, feel free, you don't have to name names, but what's the worst interview experience you've ever had, either as a candidate or on the other side of the table?
I mean, I'll give you both, right? So the
Yeah,
first
please
one
do.
was myself for a previous role, not this role, but I was sitting in an interview, and I had a task to do. So the hiring manager, who was going to be my manager, had given me her laptop to go away, look at some Google Sheets, spend 25 minutes, 30 minutes, or whatever it was on the project, and come back. So I sat for probably 3 or 4 minutes, and I had a glass of water next to me, and I spilt the water on the laptop, and I thought, shit. Sorry, sorry. But anyway, I
That's
thought, oh no. So I got up. There was some blue roll in the corner, so I just grabbed some blue roll, and I sort of damped the laptop, and I thought, okay, fine, let's get into this. And probably about 90 seconds after that moment, the screen flickered and just
oh, no.
shut down. I was like, no. So I really, really panicked. I was like, oh my God. And this was an expensive laptop as well. It was an Apple MacBook. And so anyway, my heart was racing, and I just took a breath, and I stepped up, and I went into the other room, and I said, I'm really, really sorry. I think, I've had an accident. I think I've broken your laptop. And so anyway, rushing around the room, trying to find me a second laptop, that went. And I walked out of that interview, and I thought, there's no way I'm getting that job. There's no way. I've already cost them 2 grand in having to replace the laptop. So anyway, I then got a phone call later on, and I had been given the job, and
Serious? Wow.
I was amazed. And when I got the job and I started 3 months later, I was told that laptop sat in a box of rice for a month, and it never turned back on. So I'd completely ruined the laptop. They'd still give me the job. I think that honesty and just owning up to what I'd done really helped me. And that's what I mean. Like, in an interview, just be honest and transparent with everything, and it will work in your favor. At the time, it could have been quite easy for me to just say, I don't know what's happened here, but your laptop's broke.
Yeah. Most people would
Most
do
probably
that.
would have done.
Yeah.
So that was that was a very stressful moment, and probably the most
Yeah.
stressed I've been in an interview. Um,
That's the
and
sort of
then
person you want in your team, isn't it? I mean, having that someone who's honest, especially when it comes to a job
exactly,
that needs honesty,
exactly,
I think that
it worked.
definitely works in your favor, doesn't it?
I guess on the flip side, not being honest, I interviewed someone again in a different, in my old brewery, and I was speaking to this young candidate about this. We'd done the interview really, and towards the end, we sort of just started speaking about hobbies and X, Y, and Z. And this young lad sort of said, "Yeah, no, I'm really into craft beer," and kind of was waffling a bit. And I sort of said, okay, no, that's cool. I mean, you don't have to drink beer to get the
Yeah.
job, but what's your go-to beer then?
Yeah.
And his response was Jack Daniels and Coke. And I
Ah,
sort of said, Oh, okay, interesting. Um, clearly doesn't drink beer.
Yeah.
Not, Jack Daniel's, last time I checked, certainly isn't a beer.
Hmm.
So anyway, kind of thought there's no reason to lie and make this
Exactly.
up. Just say, look, I have no interest in beer, but I can do the job, sort of thing. So yeah,
Sure.
two complete opposite ends of the
Yeah.
spectrum. But
The
yeah,
honesty being the theme with both of that's really interesting. Sean, thank you so much. That's thanks for making me laugh, and thanks for the
no
insight. It's
problem at
really
all.
useful. I really appreciate it. I don't mind, but I'll cut this up and
Yeah, no worries at all.